Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we get to look at a new line of ships. The Cassard here is going to be a new Tier 10 French destroyer. More focused on torpedoes, although we do still have some pretty solid guns here. This ship I found to be very fun to play so far. I've only played a few games, just the first impressions here of course. I'm going to play it a bunch more, but I had a really good time with this thing. It's going to be a little hard to play. I got some very good matchmaker where I didn't have to deal with carriers or subs. That is going to be a massive weak point of a ship like this. But anytime you can get normal surface ship games, you're going to have a great experience with this thing. So what do we have? The special gimmick of this ship is going to be its torpedoes. They do variable damage based on how far away the enemy ship is that takes those torpedoes. So with the Cassard here, it is getting a bit of a change. I'll mention that right away. The gameplay you're seeing here is before the nerf, which is that the maximum damage distance is reduced from 8 to 7 kilometers. So at 7 kilometers, there's going to be a drop-off in damage down to a minimum value. They still do pretty good damage out to range, though, to be honest with you. That might be a bit of a complaint of mine, is that the damage output is still really high out at these longer ranges. But with these torpedoes, we get 24,267 alpha damage, which is very, very high. At 7 kilometers, that's going to start to drop off, and at 10.8 kilometers, you reach the minimum of 16,987. So your minimum damage still being around 17,000 is very, very, very good. The maximum range here on these torpedoes is 13.5 kilometers, so not quite as far as some of the other ones at tier 10, but still quite decent and very, very powerful. This ship also gets great concealment, so when we go on this destroyer hunter roll with these essentially Marceau guns with better shell velocity, we can do some pretty good damage to people, I gotta say. They do have awkward firing angles though if you are trying to shoot these guns. Shooting all three is gonna be a bit of a challenge. You gotta give 40 degrees of broadside, both forwards and backwards, which is unfortunate. Forwards, you can get 2 guns off, though, at, 20 degrees, I think? And towards the stern, you always get 2 guns, which is nice. So in this kiting roll that I'm going to employ a lot in this video, you're still getting most of your DPM. It's very good. This ship being French also means we have French saturation on this thing, so it's very tanky. 24,000 HP doesn't look like a lot, especially given we don't have a smoke or a heal. Very little utility here, only a speed boost, which is incredibly powerful. But the French saturation, if you're wondering how it works, is basically individual components of your ship, the bow, the stern, the midsection, each have a set amount of hit points in them, and that's the hit points you're taking away when you hit a ship. And anytime they get that dirty look, that damaged look, that means they're running low on hit points in that area. Your shells will start to do a less amount of damage once those areas are saturated, especially with high explosive. With French ships, they just have an absurdly low amount of HP initially, so they saturate incredibly quickly and you do very little damage to them as they get to low HP. Yeah, these torpedoes hit pretty hard. That was 4 torps! Into a main, which has a really good torp protection, by the way. I will say I did try to play this ship like it had a 7 kilometer maximum range for its highest damage. So with the main there, I tried to wait until he would be in range and then launch the torpedoes just to kind of simulate it a little bit more. The torps are still going to do really good damage to range. You know, we got that Smolensk there is very, very nice to see. And yeah, this poor main dude. Yeah, leaving one of these things alone, trying to push into it, good luck, because the torpedo DPM is pretty solid as well. You have a base reload of 120 seconds on 12 torpedoes. They're split up into 4 different launchers, 3 torpedoes each, and you get half on each side. So the damage output is quite extreme. In this game in particular, I'm actually running a gun build, but afterwards I'll show you the full torpedo build. And either way, you're doing just absurd damage with these torpedoes. I mentioned already the shell velocity being a little bit better than the Marceau, which is nice. I still don't want to be playing this ship open water quite so much, as you might have noticed. Our speed is pretty lacking. This is a French DD that is not very fast. So with this thing, you do only get 34 knots as your speed. That can be buffed, of course, with things like a speed flag, but it's pretty slow for a DD that's not the smallest either. And your only saving grace, really, with this thing is going to be your engine boost, which is on cooldown right now, unfortunately, as I'm trying to open up. Awkward firing angles here as well, meaning I take increased damage too. And this engine boost, though, is going to save you, because this is a 30% engine boost. I think I got up to around 46 knots or so with it. That's a lot. That's a large increase. It's so much more power that it also means, even though you're not as fast as Kleber or Marceau when they've got their engine boost up or anything like that, you're still pretty quick. And being 30% means you can accelerate and speed juke very well, at least when your engine boost is up and your engine's not taken out. I did notice that it did get its modules knocked out a fair amount. You'd have to be a little bit careful with that. With these torpedoes, though, this is the main gimmick of the ship, of course, and they seem a little too strong. Like, obviously, I'm playing the pre-nerfed version, right? This is still stronger than what it will be, but a kilometer difference, where the damage drop-off starts a little bit sooner, isn't really going to change a lot of these torp hits out at these longer ranges. I'm a little surprised that the torp damage is actually so high at its reduced amount. 17,000 alpha is really good. I was expecting it to go down to something more like Holland torpedoes, right? Like Holland torps being around 10,000 alpha damage, but still retaining nice speed and range. I guess that's the other thing to point out here. The base speed is 72 knots. If you fully build for them, they approach 80 knots of speed. That's that's a lot. Fully built for concealment, I believe I got to around 6.1 detect. Looking at a third-party website here where I don't have the build, I just have the base stats. But concealment-wise, it is very, very solid as well. So even though the gun power doesn't quite hold up to some of the best gunboats at this tier, you have very, very nice detect to make up for that. You're oftentimes not as caught out as a Marceau or a Kleber might be with these French guns. The shell velocity being a little better than Marceau helps it as well to play a bit more of a gunboat role, even though it's a little awkward here in these open water circumstances, especially when you're the last one alive. A bit of a blowout in this one, but we still made it a bit competitive, kind of. 5 kills for us into this one, and yeah, man, those torpedoes just do a lot of damage still at their maximum range, considering their speed. So 5 kills here, 12 torpedo hits with, mind you, a full gun build. I'll show you the builds a little bit later, but very decent start here with this ship. We're going to move on to a more torp-focused build in this next game, but just to talk about the guns a little bit more, the HE DPM is 195,000, which is fine. That puts you right around what Lucian's HE DPM is, slightly better than Cabras' HE DPM, and you are behind, though, things like Holland, which has 210, Gearing 216, Marceau, of course, up at 253,000, very, very powerful. Smalland, 247,000. So you're not the best gunboat at this tier, but the improved concealment helps it so much. And a situationally very fast maneuverable ship is nice to have. I'm going to have to get a lot better at using this speed boost when I need to. It's very hard to not just pop it to get around the map quicker. It does feel quite sluggish without it. So trying to flank, yeah, you know, it's a little slow, but oftentimes if you think you're going to get into a fight at any point, make sure you save it for those fights, as you need that to survive. Even though the French saturation is quite powerful on this thing, it keeps you alive, man. In the beginning of this video, I did show you capping. I did want to include that, even though I knew I wouldn't get to talk about it right away. But this ship being so awkward with these firing angles means if you just sit stern in towards people and you use 66% of your DPM, you're going to take very little damage. Especially if you have a speed boost up to do some engine speed juking, that kind of thing. And you still have okay DPM, and that reduced damage you're going to take when you just fully accept you're not shooting your front gun. It's kind of hilarious, actually. So much like the Rune, actually, the tier 9 German cruiser, kiting away and just using that ability to shoot most of your DPM while you're kiting is actually pretty good for a ship like this one that wants to farm some of the time with its main guns. This is a bit of an example where I don't think I would necessarily be able to use the maximum damage of these torpedoes here. If this Guden keeps reversing, I think he'd get outside that 7-kilometer range. But that brings me to one of the nicest points about these torpedoes. It's not like the Mini Gumo, okay? I enjoyed the Mini Gumo a lot because that ship had 2 options for torpedoes. You had the ultra close range, high damage, fast torps, and then you had the really slow 15-kilometer ones that made it comfortable to play. That was kind of my whole thing. It was comfortable to play. This ship feels like it builds on that mechanic just without having separate torps. It's just that they do reduced damage as they get outside of that close range, massive damage ability. So they're actually much more powerful in my opinion too, just because they retain the speed out to range. Even though they don't quite have the damage, they still have a lot of damage out to those longer ranges. The tier 10, especially here with these, I mean, like 17,000 alpha isn't bad, man. It is not bad at all. So, I don't know. I guess maybe it might be a little overtuned considering these games I had. But again, I hadn't played against carriers or subs yet in a ship with situational speed to keep it alive. And that's about it. You're going to have some problems, I think, running into carriers and submarines. So maybe it's a little worse than I'm showing. I might have got a little bit lucky here, but I gotta say, I had an absolute blast with this thing. I can't wait to play it some more. Of course, early access is what's coming here, so let me find that stuff to tell you about it. It's gonna be a bunch of tokens again, as usual. The Cassard will be available in consecutive bundles at the end for a 20,000 doubloon purchase. So there you go. I mean, looks tame compared to Rhode Island's price. But still, this is early access. So with this thing, again, I'm always going to recommend with the early access crap, just ignore it. Wait the 2 months. Pretend like it's still under the old NDA rules of CCs. Remember when CCs used to play test ships, right? Just pretend it's still on test ships. And then wait the 2 months till everybody else gets it. That's kind of what I would like to do. And that way you're not spending a lot for a tech tree ship. You could grind. Don't worry, we're going to take a look at a bunch of the other tiers in the future, but for now, just the tier 10 here. We run into a Grozovoy on 20,000 HP or near enough, and we were on 16,000 HP, and I want you to notice how we're going to out-trade him here. Doing that angled tactic, not getting greedy for our front guns. Look at how little damage he's doing to us. Just tiny little hits here and there, and our back guns are still hitting him quite hard. Grozovoy, of course, has a heal, so just to spoil things here, I'm actually going to do around 23,000 damage to this Grozovoy here, and he did not manage to kill me, and I was on 16,000 HP. He's managed to do around 10,000 damage here so far, and that's just the power of French saturation and not getting greedy for those front guns. And, I mean, I think I blind fire kill him here. Maybe 1 or 2 more hits. Columbo comes around the corner. A little scary, but we will try and dodge it. And again, notice this whole time my speed boost was out. So my management of speed boost was pretty poor while playing this thing. That'll be a bit of a skill check, I suppose, with this line, is learning when to use them appropriately. Now, this Columbo here behind the island, just real quick, as one of the guys on the enemy team was questioning, how did I know to Torp? Where I did. So Columbo's going to get spotted here briefly, where he's angled towards this gap. He's turning towards this gap, so I think he's gonna come through, and then I just torp at that corner. That's kind of what it is. So if you were watching the video, hello, and there's the there's the reason I torped, I suppose. The torpedo reload being so good here with AR as well. It's this ship on low HP is gonna be terrifying, man. I gotta say, the torpedo power here is just so strong. Which I haven't really compared to actually other torpedo ships. Shimakaze having 146,000 torp DPM. Cassard is like right there with that 145,000. That's with the highest damage level. What if the lowest damage level hits? Well, then you're at 101,000 torpedo DPM, which still puts you above Summers, Hayate, Gearing, Yu Yang, Lucian, Tromp, Z52, a bunch of ships that you wouldn't expect to be Torp ships down at the bottom. Marceau being 75,000, right? So even with our torpedoes doing their minimum damage, yeah, it's It's a lot, man. It's a lot. So I think maybe the Torps should have fallen off a little bit more, considering just how extreme the damage is and the reload being so good with these torpedoes here. I mean, I've got a ton of AR here, but I mean, I'm around just over a minute on the reload here with these torpedoes. That's maybe a bit too much. But to be fair, this ship will be hard to play because it doesn't have a smoke. It does not have a heal. So a French DD that's even slower than the typical French DDs are, it's going to be difficult for newer players to play that. But still, managed to finish off the Colombo in this one. And that's 157,000 damage in this one as well. So two really nuts games. Again, the matchmaker could have been blessed a little bit since the carrier didn't focus us in this one and we didn't have to really deal with subs. But once people know that this thing doesn't really have a smoke, doesn't have a heal, doesn't have a lot of speed all the time, it might get focused out a little bit sooner. Although that French saturation should be helping you out. But those are the games that I have for you. And that trade with that Grozovoy doing over 23,000 damage to him while he wasn't able to kill us while we were on 16,000 HP really kind of opened my eyes to what this ship can do with its gun power. On paper, looks a little lackluster, of course, and I had a Torp build in that one, by the way. So that wasn't even focusing on the guns, which could have done much better. But that French saturation, man, is just so good. Looking at the build that I was running here with our gunboat build, this is what I was doing. I still wanted that concealment. I think that's important. At 6.5, we're pretty solid on concealed, but still not the best. And our DPM is enough that people won't want to deal with us too often. But those turret angles are pretty awkward with this full gunboat build. So you got to be a little bit careful. Personally, I probably run more of a hybrid build. I might not take Brawler. I don't know. Maybe less of the upgrades, I suppose, on the ship itself. The consumables, though, maybe it could be cool to invest more in consumables enhancements or things like that. And then for the commander that I ran for the torpedo build, it looked like this. I believe I went like that, if I'm remembering correctly. So a build like that where you still have some on the guns, you just don't have the Fearless Brawler. And I guess that would make more sense if you're wanting to farm from behind islands, which is probably a little smarter, especially if you don't have that amazing speed boost up. Although I could consider maybe swapping out main batter and AA specialist for consumables enhancements and consumable specialist. I don't know, maybe maybe that would help it a little bit more. I did run engine boost mod as well, so that does give me that 117 second action time. Could do a little more with the commander there, and then the cooldown time being 85 seconds is already quite good. 5 charges of that. I didn't quite mention that yet, but very nice to have the extra charges to just kind of spam it when you have it. Torpedo build would use this. Gunboat build, obviously, using the gun power ones. And yeah, that torpedo reload gets pretty low. 91 seconds, man, with 24,000 damage alpha. That up to 8 kilometers, of course, is going to change to up to 7 kilometers, which is still really good, considering the Torps do like almost 17,000 damage when they're at their minimum. A little high. I like the concept, though. It's very creative. It's fresh. It's cool. Different. I think it's... We'll see how fun it is to play against it as a battleship on a flank. This could be like the next version of Benham, just with harder hitting, faster, longer range torpedoes. I don't know. But we'll see. To play it, though, is very unique. It's something different, and I like that. And I had a lot of fun with it. I should mention, too, if you're not going to spend money on the early access stuff, you can still earn some of the tech tree destroyers here. You'll get enough tokens to get the tier 7 without spending any money just by playing the game. So there'll be personal challenges that you can earn tokens, and you can get up to the tier 7. So that's cool. It'll be expensive if you want to go further than that, of course. That's how the early access is. But for now, that's it on the Cassard. We're going to look at some of the other tiers going forward, but I'm pretty hyped already because I had a really good time with this ship. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.